what does relatively mean? And if it's only relatively clean, does that mean she's also relatively healthy? And are you, if she's only relatively healthy, is it worth it?
Welcome to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia Jay, and I'm here with Ashley Nicole Moss. Hey, Ashley. And
hello.
It was like that little ding was just for you. Erica Ayala is also with us. We love to see you always. And ladies, listen, the WNBA playoffs are underway. We've had the first slate of games, and we have a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are so glad you are locked in with us right here at We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. And before we get into just all of the craziness, the madness, and everything in between, we have to do a little bit of housekeeping, and that is remind you of the usual, and that is to follow us on all of our social media platforms as listed below. And if you are somebody who is heavy on YouTube, make sure you are subscribed and tuned in to our channel. Make sure you are following, notifications turned all the way up. And last but not least, if you are somebody who is a podcast listener, that's okay too, because if you scan this QR code wherever you get your pods, we will pop up. We're on Spotify and we're on Apple. So look, there's no reason to not be tapped in with us right here at We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. And before we get into all of the first game or first few games, our impressions, our way too early predictions, and everything in between, we do have some news. The Valkyries' Veronica Burton was named the WNBA's most improved player, receiving 68 of 72 awards. So congratulations to her first and foremost. I mean, that's huge. Again, the Valkyries just making strides and making noise in so many different ways in their inaugural year. And now it's nice that one of their players is kind of put in the position to showcase that, like, hey, I'm improving and this is how I'm doing it. One thing that was interesting, though, is Alicia Gray did receive a vote despite being in the MVP conversations this year. So that kind of has started a discourse on WNBA Twitter, how you can receive a vote for MIP and also be in MVP conversation. Alicia, kind of where do you fall in that conversation?
I, quite frankly, do not know who voted for her in this way. I think that she should definitely, without a doubt, be in the MVP conversation. But listen to some of these stats. Alicia averaged a career high of 18.4 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 3.5 assists, has earned 3 consecutive All-Star selections, 1 Rookie of the Year, just made the AP first team. She's right, like I said, where she should be in the MVP conversation, rather. But I believe that this vote for most improved was just a waste of a vote, really, to be honest with you.
And also, real quick, apologies that I said Alicia. I'm thinking of Alicia, and Alicia is a lot.
Listen, it's a lot of yes. And for those who don't know, just a little thing. She said earlier, I want to say this year, she was named after her dad, Al. So it's just for anyone who needs to remember, Alicia.
Yes, it's Alicia, yeah. And I was thinking of Alicia.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm right here.
Alicia.
Yeah. So. Right. And not to be confused with Felicia, who I'm saying bye to, because I have said this before. I get really worked up when it comes to how votes and the categories are utilized. And most improved player, to me, a lot of times does seem like it's a proxy for, well, I am not sure if they're in this category over here. In this case, I suppose MVP. So I'm going to bring them over here. And I don't like that. I think also most improved players sometimes is for players that have been injured, which I think is a whole different conversation. That's more of a comeback player to me. Whereas Veronica Burton, I like this pick coming back to her just because she had more opportunity and made the most of that opportunity. So I like that as most improved. I think that's solid there. But when it comes to Alicia Gray and, Alicia, we did talk about awards.
I'm doing it.
I got you. We're gonna emphasis. We're gonna put all the emphasis on today. But I think when it comes to Alicia Gray, she is someone who has improved her game absolutely 100%. And the conversation for me, I guess, I mean, I'm not put out that she's in conversation of most improved, generally speaking, because she has improved her game. I think that's real. But when the awards come down, again, how they're utilized, I think there could probably be maybe some parameters when it comes to how the voting is put through, or what the awards are meant to be about. But yeah, I think Alicia Gray is an MVP caliber player and candidate, and was one of my 5 players that I put up for that award. So yeah, I mean, I get where people are coming from, because again, I just have issues with awards overall, and she did improve. Is she most improved? Again, maybe we need a better definition for the award.
Well, look, I know one definition we won't need clarification on, and that is Rookie of the Year, because Paige Bueckers was named Rookie of the Year. But although she becomes the 7th player from UConn to do it, some of the names included Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, Breanna Stewart. I mean, the list goes on and on. She was not the unanimous Rookie of the Year, with Sonia Citron receiving 2 votes. Again, I saw a discourse on WNBA Twitter kind of open up about this very thing. Erica, I'm going to toss it to you. I feel like we've been talking about this being Paige's award the entire season. This is no knock to any of the other rookies. This is no knock to what they've been doing. I think we were all impressed with how much or how seamlessly they have made this transition from, just being collegiate players to draftees to professionals. And Paige has done it so well, and she's put the Dallas Wings on her back as much as she could, because as we know, it's not a one-person job. There are multiple factors into becoming a winning basketball team. But we're not receiving the unanimous vote has a lot of people surprised.
I am not one of them. I have said it before. I'm not one of them. I have said before that Sonia Citron was sneakily making a case. That being said, again, I've gone through my votes. They are up on CBSSports.com. We have talked about it on the podcast, so y'all can see who I voted for. I will just emphasize that I did vote for Paige Bueckers, and I didn't expect it to be unanimous. I honestly think, of all people, of all players, Paige is, I get the impression, I don't know for sure, I just get the impression that she would be unbothered. She got to go, she got to go and strut her stuff at the J Hud show and get her award from Kathy, and I think she's fine.
What's it called? The Spirit Tunnel?
Spirit Tunnel, exactly.
I don't know about that. I don't know if it's the Spirit Tunnel. I think there might be another name, but that's okay.
No, is it? I think it is called the Spirit Tunnel.
It's the Spirit Tunnel. No,
is it called? Do they call it the Spirit Tunnel?
Yeah.
Okay, I had never heard it called the Spirit Tunnel before, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like we should see what the real name is.
Emma, can we fact check that? I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, but if I'm wrong, I'm 0 for 2 today. Go ahead.
All I know is, and some people will know this, shout out to my Freedom Schools people, because I'm like, somebody from there worked at a summer camp somewhere, because that's all the summer camp stuff. So especially, anyway, but I understand that people are upset. I don't know. I get bothered, but also unbothered.
I wouldn't say upset. I think people are more so maybe surprised she wasn't unanimous. I think that's more of the word. I don't know if upset is a fair word, because it's not like Sonia Citron wasn't balling all season long to where it's like, well, where'd she come from? I just think that Paige, I think a lot of people thought if she was going to win Rookie of the Year, just because of how much everyone was kind of talking about it, and everyone was on the same page about it kind of being Paige's award, it being Paige's award. I think that maybe a lot of people thought everyone would vote in that direction when the voting came. I don't know if I would use surprise. I don't know if I would use upset more than I would surprise, maybe.
I could see surprised a little bit, but I'm actually myself also not surprised that Sonia got some votes. She had an amazing rookie season, a phenomenal rookie season, and impacted her team in great ways as well. So I wasn't mad at the 2 votes at all. I think that, Paige would, like you said, Erica, she wouldn't be either. And I'm just not surprised either. I don't know. I didn't feel any kind of way when I saw it. Paige won, and we expected that. And if she hadn't, that would have been a different conversation. But, giving Sonia a couple of votes, I even think maybe she could have had more, to be honest with you, with the season that she had. I mean, 2 to me was a little bit surprising, if I'm being honest. So congratulations to Paige. I mean, when she put up that 40 piece, I think she solidified everything that she did in the season. And, congratulations to her on being the rookie of the year. She deserved that, and she did that. Well, I guess it's my turn. You guys, I don't know what's going on today. We're it's okay. It's one of those
I still want the fact check on the spirit tunnel, by the way, Emma.
Yeah, I want to know too, because that was the first time I heard it called that, and I was like, "Wait, spirit tunnel? I don't know."
Like, it was called the spirit. Now I'm gonna, what, you talk, right. I'll Google.
No, and hey, actually, that could be my 0 for the day. You know what I'm saying? So I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Just hopefully she finds out, Emma. I know she's like, I'm literally looking up.
Yes, they're called the spirit tunnel.
Spirit tunnel. I thought so.
That's what they call it?
Yes, the spirit tunnel on the Jennifer Hudson show is their viral backstage ritual where staff members line the hallway, creating a tunnel of energy and positivity to hype up their guests as they walk on stage for interviews.
All right, 0 for me on that, but also spirit tunnel is just I don't know what else I would call it, but it's just not the spirit tunnel. I feel like it could be remixed. That's all I'm saying.
The hype train. I don't know what you need.
Hype train.
Hype train. Okay, we gonna bring that to the show. Hype train.
Yeah.
Let's go. Come on, Alicia.
Put in the comments what y'all would call it. That's what we want to know. Put in the comments what you guys would call it, because
hype train.
I don't know. I like hype train is better. That's all I have to say.
Or Soul Train, but that's taken already.
Yeah. So see, you gotta remix it a little. See, hype train. Hype train.
Well, speaking of remixes, Erica, there are some teams that played in the first game of the first round of the playoffs that would definitely love to remix the game that they played, and that's for sure. We're going to talk about our takeaways, but let's just give a little breakdown of how the games ended up. The Atlanta Dream versus the Fever was 80-68 with the Dream winning. The Lynx versus the Valkyries, 101-72 with the Lynx taking home the first win. The Liberty versus Phoenix, this was an OT game, and it was 76-69 with the Liberty coming out with the win. And then the Aces versus the Storm, which was a surprise to me. I thought this game was going to be a little bit more spicy, but 102-77 with the Aces taking that first game. So Ashley, I'm going to start with you. When you look at all of these games in total, what was your biggest observation of the first game in the first round?
How the Storm pulled the short end of the stick here. That's my biggest thing. Damn. They barely made it in, and that's their opponent. I would hate that. That was my biggest thing. I was actually very surprised also how close that Liberty Phoenix game was. And it wasn't really so much because of the seeding. Obviously 4 and 5 is not that far off in terms of seeding, but I just thought, or rather I just think the realization of what we have all kind of been talking about leading up to the playoffs, about how the Liberty don't look healthy and how that's a big thing that's kind of concerning for a lot of people, myself included as a Liberty fan. It was just interesting to me to see that in real time, because I think when you talk about things in hypotheticals, you never really know, right? And I think actually seeing how it unfolded and how an unhealthy Liberty team kind of looked against this Phoenix team, and a game that really went down to the wire, went into overtime, and could have gone either way at various points throughout the game. I think for me was probably something that I was super concerned about watching, and I'm going to be concerned about watching this series between these two teams. That was probably my biggest takeaway from the 4 matchups.
I agree with you that the performance, quite honestly, on both sides was concerning. That being said, it wasn't surprising to me. I love saying how I hate making predictions, but then I love saying that when I'm I'm asked to make predictions and they're right. You know, I love saying I was right. So
Mhm.
one of the things that I did say about the first round matchups is that the Phoenix Mercury versus New York Liberty matchup was the most likely. It was the series most likely to give us overtime. And we got that in game number 1. Because the thing about Phoenix is that, you know, they had beaten the Liberty, you know, throughout the season. However, not only because they placed 4-5, but also I just think with the personnel that they have and the inconsistencies that they sometimes have, both of those teams can be inconsistent. You have to factor in that both teams have had injuries to key players. So, you know, I want to offer that up. However, if you could put that to the side and you just look at like the I almost said shift to shift because I'm in hockey mode right now. If you look at possession to possession, there are things that and in game 1 we saw that these teams have at times they just don't hit the gas full throttle. They're not able to get the stops that they want. They're turning over the ball. They're missing easy layups. Emma Mieseman missed some layups. We saw Tosh Cloud, AT miss some layups. You know, Satu Sabali did not have a great outing. Her field goal percentage was not very good. So that was concerning, but not surprising. And so another reason I think this series is going to be close is because of those things that I just mentioned and the inconsistencies and kind of the self-inflicted wounds that we see from both teams on top of the health concerns. Now you have a situation where they're going to have to dog this out. They're going to have to dog this series out. I do think it has a likelihood to go to 3 games. We know that there's an injury that has to be discussed on the Liberty side. But I think that they're going to have to scrap it out. And I think the big question for me, the winner of this series, are they going to be so tired because they had to work so hard and overcome their own kind of mental blocks and difficulties to get through this series? Is that going to fatigue them for the next round, or is that going to motivate them? And I think it could go either way for New York and for Phoenix, just depending on who is able to advance.
Yeah, I think for New York in this instance, they should be very happy that they pulled this out in overtime, especially because of the injury to Breanna Stewart. You know, we'll be talking about that a little bit later on, but the imaging came back on her knee that was relatively clean, and she did not practice today. However, she'll be a game time decision for game 2. And without Stewie on there, with them already trying to gel with the players that have returned, that is what my main concern is for the Liberty. So the fact that they won this first game, it's huge for them, because if they hadn't, I would say with this injury, you know, no matter if she plays or not, it wouldn't be looking good, you know, in this first round for them.
But to your point, is because of all of the factors you named and Erica named, it's going to be an uphill battle, and it's just also going to make you wonder what version of the team you're going to get if they do advance, because health is such a huge factor, not only because obviously you need to be healthy to win games, but because when you're healthy, wins come, I don't want to say easier, but it's less strain to get them on an already strained body. You know, it's kind of like pushing a wagon uphill versus going downhill. It's a challenge either way to not lose your balance, but you're exerting more energy going up. And I think that's the biggest concern with the Liberty is if they do get out of this matchup, what version of the Liberty will you have in the next matchup, and how is that going to play out? And I think that's kind of, I don't know, I'm a little concerned about.
We'll definitely see. But speaking of energy, one thing that I noticed for pretty much every team is that, well, let me take the Lynx and the Aces out of that, because that's another thing that we'll talk about, is just how dominant they were. But if you look at the teams overall, I felt like they were tired. You know, I felt like the players were trying to get every ounce of energy out of their bag in this first round. And that kind of begs the question for me, do you think that the players need more time in between the regular season and playoffs? We'll start with you, Erica. I already see what the answer is, which I roll.
Yeah, I couldn't hide it. Claro que sí. Seguro que sí. Yes. Yes, the answer is of course yes. And it's not just in between the regular season and the playoffs. I mean, we've been talking about the schedule at least all of this season and in seasons prior, because this is the most games that we've seen in the WNBA. I also think that's why the 1-1-1 to me, I'm just like, y'all, what we doing? I don't know. But I think that absolutely the players continue to say that recovery is such a huge piece of this. And the charters for so long was that conversation about recovery versus competitive advantage, that I think it seems as though within kind of the chatter around women's basketball that we almost pulled back from that conversation. But the players haven't, because they're experiencing that all the time. That your recovery changes when you're on the road. Your recovery changes, on how many games in between you have, all of the things, how much travel you have to do. And so, yes, giving players a rest in between regular season and the postseason, I think makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the day, from a business perspective, I would imagine that most, if not all leagues, see a bump, right, when it comes to the eyes, the attention that they get in the postseason. That's when you're, in theory, right, your best players, your best teams are performing in your league. So why wouldn't you want them to be as rested as possible? Now, we know the women's basketball schedule runs into a whole host of challenges. So I do not envy the WNBA staffers that have to figure this out. And as they continue to work through it, I have to think that getting more rest for these players at minimum between regular season and the playoffs should be a priority.
Yeah, and go ahead, Ashley.
No, I think I agree completely. And I think the only other solution, and I'm going to kind of go to the NBA for an example here, is if they were to expand the playoffs in the W, right? Hear me out as I talk through this out loud. Then you would potentially be able to have your own version of the play-in tournament, which then awards teams who've already solidified playoff spots extra rest, because those are going to be your better teams, right? Those are your teams that solidified top playoff spots. They shouldn't have to go immediately into the playoffs. The benefit of being an actual seeded playoff team, especially of a certain number, is that you've done what you need to do throughout the regular season, whether it's, you just balled out, or you were also a benefit of circumstance, whatever the case may be, you locked in your position. There should be a way to, hopefully, and as there are more expansion teams being brought into the league, a way where you're expanding the playoffs, and then you have somewhat of that mini kind of play-in tournament style thing that, one, allows the trajectory of the season not to stop. Therefore, you're not losing momentum from a business standpoint. There are games still on TV. There are still advertising and advertisements and all the things that go into the inner workings of putting on a professional sport and broadcasting that sport. But you're also not exhausting the teams who have kind of been balling out the entire season. I personally don't see a world where you continue to expand this league and you don't expand the playoffs, and that's not a conversation that's had, because I just don't see how there's any longevity in having the regular season end and then in 24 hours, 48 hours, the playoffs start. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And that would be something that, if I were in the front office in the position of making decisions, I would really start looking into what we can do, kind of like a mini tournament in the middle, to expand the playoffs, but also give that break to the teams that really deserve it.
Okay, Commish.
I was going to say, if the Commish is listening, maybe put this on the list of things to consider for sure. I couldn't help but, when I'm thinking about energy, and we've been talking about injury and that type of thing, I couldn't help but, when I was watching Indiana, looking at, the team that is out there on the court right now and the team that is on the bench right now, that literally some of the players had to sit in the stands because there wasn't enough space on the bench because of the injuries. And I couldn't help but to think, number one, wish we could send them energy and health, but also number two, literally send it. Come on, Erica, send that on. But number two, also, what could have been if Indiana was not injured like this. What could this season have brought them, Erica, if they weren't in the position that they are now? It was really hard to watch, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I mean, the Clark injury or injuries happened so early in the season that we got a little bit of a taste, perhaps, of what that could have looked like. And then the bottom just fell out, right? It was just like bang, 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 injury after injury, like a domino effect. So I think you really have to look at that, those periods and those glimpses where Indiana was without Clark. And still was competitive. I think Ari McDonald was a huge get there. We saw Natasha Howard able to step up, including the reason that they won in a big part, a reason they won the Commissioner's Cup, right? I think that you have someone like Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson that go out. These are veterans in the league. In Colson's case, has been around championship caliber teams, and that is something that you need when you're making a postseason run. So I think there are a lot of different elements, and I think that's the hope, right? That's what Indiana is hanging on to as they just try to survive whatever 2025 brings them.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting too when you think about Indiana, right? Because I think that now you have because all these players are so young and they're developing constantly as individual players and as a team. You don't even have this season, whether it was a successful season or not, like had they all been healthy, you don't even have the experience of playing together under your belt as a unit. You literally are starting from scratch going into next training camp or going into off season next training camp, next preseason. And I think that's something that if you're an Indiana Fever fan, you're frustrated about because you didn't even really get to see what you did, but in such a small sample size of like what we can do better. What other additions do we need to this roster? How can we tweak this? How can we capitalize? Like you're literally going into the off season and trying to figure that out this season instead of having a whole season of tape, if you will, on what to adjust on as individuals, what to adjust on as teams, what the front office needs to do better in terms of bringing in the right coaches or the right systems or different players. And you don't have any of that. And I think that's really probably the most just frustrating part of this Indiana Fever situation is like there's just no tape on like what the team can be. And I think that it's just crazy how the season unfolded for them.
Absolutely. Like I said, very hard to watch. And they certainly are going to have to, get in that gym in some way, shape, or form and start to rebuild from where they're at. I'm not counting that, I don't want to count them out of the playoffs yet because obviously we're just on game one. So I have to be fair there, but this offseason is definitely going to be one of rest, getting back healthy, and figuring out what we can do with the pieces that they have moving forward. So
yeah,
a lot of things to do.
There's a lot of things to do, but right now what we have to do is get into one of our favorite segments, and that is our Guarantee of the Week presented by AT&T. Okay, so this week we are taking a look at what teams are going to guarantee or which teams we will guarantee will force a game 3 in this next slate of playoff games. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Miss Erica. Which team do you think will bounce back in game 2 and force a game 3 and why?
For me, it's Phoenix. I think I've kind of alluded to this already. This was the series that I thought was going to go 3 games anyway. So, I got to double down there. And I think it also goes back to me saying that there were inconsistencies throughout the season at times that were not explicitly injury related for both teams. And I think we also saw that in this game. I know that, Phoenix felt like they survived a kind of subpar New York performance. I think that there were opportunities to hit the gas, or to use a boxing reference, there were opportunities to kind of like go for that, 1-2 combo, sure. Right. And kind of both teams at times they were pulling punches. So you talk about feeling out games and things of that nature. Game 1 was a very kind of I think both teams are going to want to come back and give a little bit more. And Phoenix is going to have to backs against the wall. But if they win, they know they go back to Phoenix and the X Factor. And that too is because they earned that, right? They earned home court advantage. So I think that's another element that can kind of stoke the fire that hopefully they got cooking, because both of those teams, but especially Phoenix, has got to put something together. And I have confidence that they can do it. I know I'm saying that they play in New York, but I just got to be the analyst. That's how I see it. I ain't say I'm liking it, but I'm just saying that's how I see it.
Alicia's point, though, fatigue has a lot to do with the performances that we've seen from most of these teams. And I think that is a very real conversation to be had. And I think that also when you're the team trying to bounce back in game 2, you're going to see them try to fight through that fatigue, but the fatigue is real. And when you talk about two teams going at it, specifically two teams who are on different coasts, I know when I'm traveling to the West Coast and I'm not playing a basketball game, I'm like, damn, it's only 7:00. Like, I can't do, like, it's hard. So you mix that into with the fatigue of an entire WNBA season and the strain it has on your body and flying back and forth. It's hard any way you slice it, regardless of which team you are, but especially for the team, on the road, for sure. I think that has a lot to do with what we're seeing with these lackluster performances. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't agree more with Erica. I think out of all of the matchups that we've seen so far, that Phoenix has the best chance. But hear me out. I think that this team, okay, I see y'all not even. I haven't even said what it is yet.
Drop, because you say "hear me out." Usually, when someone says "hear me out," they're about to say something crazy. So go ahead.
I think that the Golden State Valkyries has a chance to push it to a game 3. Okay, I see y'all's faces. Ashley,
I respect the hometown.
For those who aren't watching,
I respect the way you hold down the bay, Alicia.
It was the squint. It was the eye squint with the sip for me.
Yeah.
No. I respect the way she holds down the bay. I respect it.
Yes, because, well, we won't talk about all the New York teams, but it's cool. What I'm going to say right now is that while I understand they're not technically going back to Valhalla, I believe the fans are going to bring Valhalla to the SAP Center, which I said the other day. And this historic year that they've had is going to culminate into a win. Not only for themselves, because we know how Natalie Nakase has run that team the entire season, right? And we know that these players all have chips on their shoulders and something to prove. And I think after that game that they just had, which was not a great game, okay? That's an understatement. They're going to come back home and they are going to do everything that they can to pull out a win in front of these fans that have held them down game after game after game. And I really just feel like they're all going to dig deep, do what they've got to do to at least, in the least, get their first playoff win in franchise history. I'm gonna guarantee it. Y'all, I wish all y'all, because I know some of you are listening on the pod or on the podcast platforms, rather. If you can see their faces, you need to go on over to YouTube and see how they're looking at me right now. I don't appreciate that. And I can't wait for the next episode so we can talk about how I was right.
I love this. I honestly do, because like
I'm here for it.
I'm here for it. I am, and I wish I was as bold as you, honestly, because I've been saying, like, Golden State, people like, how could XYZ team lose to an expansion team? I'm like, because said expansion team plays defense, because said expansion team boxes out. Like, I mean, what you mean? Like, you lost to a team that's out there getting it. So I hear you. And I don't think I like that matchup for y'all, though. I just don't. And they're gonna have to do something that they've never done, not just in expansion franchise history. They're gonna have to do something that Valkyrie's team has never done in the regular season or through one game in the playoffs. I'm just saying, which is beat Minnesota.
And I know they can. They want to do that for the first time this season, even though, they should have won the other ones. You know what I'm saying? But it's fine.
This game is Yay area. Clock it.
Come on. That's all I'm finna do. Always. You already know. Anyone from the Bay is always going to clock it for their team. But, we will see how those matchups, we'll have so much conversation in a future episode. And I can't wait to say I was right. But anyways, in a future episode about game 2 and so on and so forth. But we have to touch on something that I wish we didn't have to. And that is, yes, Breanna Stewart was injured in game 1. She went down with an injury to her left leg. She had an MRI on it on Monday, which was first reported by ESPN. And her status is uncertain for the second game. But Sandy Brondello said that while she will be a game time decision, the imaging came back relatively clean, which we could dissect what relatively clean means. Okay. However, you know, I know for me, when I saw this injury, I stood up and I was like, no, because we've all seen just the bevy of injuries that Stewie has had over the years, but then also just this season, it's like, you're just coming back and something happens again. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but you could see it in her face when it happened. That she, you know, when you have been, I know as an athlete, I just remember, you know, when you're coming back from injury or you get injured or whatever, the uncertainty of what has just happened, that personally I saw written all over her face, and it literally killed me. But, you know, we will see, you know, how she is moving forward and if she will play in this next game. But what was y'all's first thoughts? I just expressed mine, but when you saw this injury, Ashley, I mean, you know, both of you as New York fans, I know you were just beside yourself, but.
When it rains, it pours was my first thing. I was getting flashbacks of the Knicks and just the injuries. Oh, we got so close, just not close enough. And it just, to your point though, looking at Stewie's face, you know, you can tell a lot. Athletes know their bodies. And I think that, you know, one or two things happen when you kind of like watch closely and you watch enough basketball, sports in general. You can see either A, there's an uncertainty, or B, they know exactly what just transpired and they know it's not good. And for me, it was a little hard to read Stewie in that moment. Part of me, though, looking at her was kind of like she knew what just happened, but she wasn't trying to let the rest of us know. Relatively clean is something that I don't really like. That means that there's something there. And that means to me that there's something, if it's not 100, it's probably 50, that it can get to 100 if she continues to kind of play and force to play, which is so relatively clean doesn't make me feel better. Doesn't make me feel good. So that's kind of like where I'm at right now. It's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of apprehensiveness that's just not sitting well with me right now.
Yeah, I just really feel bad for the children who are gonna get that stank look when they you know, when they tell their family, yeah, my room is relatively clean. Like, what you mean? Go do it again then. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, relatively clean, I'm with you. That
or
doesn't
relatively brush my teeth.
They're not relatively, not relatively brush my teeth.
Relatively is the word.
Relatively, yeah. That's and you know, I've said this in other places. There's a little bit of gamesmanship that happens in the playoffs, especially around injury, because I agree with both of y'all. And Ashley, something that you said that she wasn't really trying to let other people know. Some people were asking on social media, well, why did she stay in the game? Well, first of all, she took the free throws so that if she could come back, she was eligible, right? That's why New York took that timeout. And then she missed the free throw, so that's a live ball. So, you know, there's things that happen there. And I think that also there's probably a part of it where she was like, I don't know. I go back and forth on if it was more hope that she could get it done, or more of let me just go through these motions, even though I know I'm cooked kind of vibes, you know. But she did that, and what I saw, even in her emotion, and what did show, even though she was trying to not have it show, is that she was trying to be a leader in that moment, and she didn't want her teammates, and especially not Phoenix, focusing on her. And I think that, you know, it was an overtime game. I think that in and of itself did propel New York in some ways to get that win. Now it's a matter of, what does relatively mean? And if it's only relatively clean, does that mean she's also relatively healthy? And are you, if she's only relatively healthy, is it worth it? This is a New York team that has taken on the pressure that they get as a New York team, as a team coming into the playoffs as the defending champions, and also the defending champions that came in as a 5 seed. So there's going to be a lot of chatter either way. And from my perspective, and we talked about this with Caitlin Clark throughout the season, the overall health of a player like Breanna Stewart for New York, for the WNBA, for women's basketball, is not worth it to push it.
No, I agree. And we kind of touched upon this, and we've been touching upon it. It's obviously, if she can play, she plays. I think that all athletes have that mindset that if I'm able to go out there, whether it's at 75%, 80%, 100%, I'm going. You're only in the playoffs once, if you're lucky, every season. And everybody has championship goals. Everybody wants to repeat in the case of the Liberty. But you also wonder at what cost, because what version of the team are you going to get? And this is not to say she won't play if she can play, but this is just playing devil's advocate. We've been saying it. If nobody is healthy and she's relatively healthy, or she's relatively clean, which means there's a part of it that's not, you wonder what this team looks like if they do advance, and if they continue to advance and they're relatively healthy and and look, everyone's banged up this time of year. Everyone's got bumps, bruises, aches, headaches, anything in between. Nobody's 100% healthy, but there is a hierarchy. There are tiers when there comes to health when you're in the postseason, and having aches and bruises and bumps is not the same as having legitimate injuries that can continue to nag you as the postseason goes on. So I just think that it's kind of a perfect storm for the Liberty right now. And it's a shame that these series aren't longer than 3 games, because that would definitely help some of these teams, specifically the Liberty, who are struggling with their health right now.
Well, given the relatively of it all, if Stewie does not play, what are the chances for the Liberty moving forward?
Well, I think they can get through Phoenix.
For sure.
I think they can get through Phoenix. If they get through Phoenix, and what happens on the other side of their or in the other series on their side of the bracket, that means then they take on Minnesota, and that is
no thanks.
I mean, relatively, I don't know. That's
relatively, it's not looking good.
That's relatively dangerous, that's a team that has built is built with length and versatility, just like the New York Liberty. And I thought it was a little bit underplayed, but Alana Smith going down with an injury and being maybe relatively healthy, but trying to gut it out, that gave the New York Liberty some possessions in the paint that maybe they don't get. Smith is a defensive player of the year candidate for this year. And, I think what she's able to do when she's healthy compared to when she's only maybe relatively healthy, like last year, I mean, that went to game 5 OT. I think that Minnesota they definitely have the narrative, right? They have the whiteboard material. That's going to be a tough one, and it would have to be a physical game. And again, putting the injuries aside, or maybe because of the injuries, this is not a New York team that I actually have seen lean into that New York grit. Nobody from New York and who roots for a New York team cares if you're from New York, because when you play for New York, you are New York, period. It's not even like an honor rate. Like, you have to play for New York. And I just haven't seen that moxie yet.
No, I actually 100% agree with that. It's unfortunate because if the Lynx and the Liberty face off, this is not the scenario in which you wanted this rematch to kind of happen, right? You would have, in a perfect world, had 2 mostly healthy teams going back at it. The rematch everybody wanted, winner takes all, meaning they go to the next round, right? So that's the unfortunate part if you're a basketball fan. But I agree with Erica, because I mean, I've seen Jalen Brunson go out there, broken hand, busted eye and like is like, yo, you have to drag me off this court. And I would like to see a little bit more tenacity from a Liberty team who are the reigning champs, are not a top 3 seed going into these playoffs, are struggling to get out of every single game. I don't want to see you guys coast. Like, I want to see this is do or die. Like, you are the reigning champ. Your back's against the wall. You know, we're going to talk about the Aces in 1 second, but I want to see that type of tenacity that the Aces had when they flipped the switch after the All-Star break and say, yeah, we're not going out like this. Like, and that was just the regular season. Like, now it's the postseason and your championship bragging rights are on the line, and you're just kind of like, we're gonna play, but like, I want to see you scrap. Like, I want to see you fight. Like, go out there and squabble up. Like, that's what I want to see.
Well, I'm gonna let the New Yorkers handle that one. Y'all handled that. I did my Bay Area thing, New York thing. So definitely a challenge.
I'm going to give you something to brag about here. We're going to talk about the Lynx and the Aces. We were teeing it up all show. Now we're here. 2 teams that absolutely looked amazing. This shouldn't really be a surprise to anybody. Even if you haven't been locked in the entire WNBA regular season, you've definitely heard about what the Lynx and the Aces have been doing all season long and continue to do going into the postseason, and look so on Sunday. Look, again, no surprises. Aces had the longest winning streak, one of the longest winning streaks in WNBA history. They might be on the path to match the longest win streak in WNBA history. The Lynx just have looked absolutely incredible. And they, you know, earlier in the season dealt with some injuries of their own, and they've been able to just figure it out and come out dominant right at the perfect time. 2 teams that are just peaking and have been peaking at the exact time. Look, showing no signs of slowing down. Alicia, I mean, talk about it. Break it down.
I think that there are teams that could definitely get games on them, right? But stopping them, no, I don't think so. Looking at the way that these 2 teams played in that first game, I mean, the Aces looked so good. To me, one of the best games they've had all season in energy, and team chemistry, and just in having fun. You know, I just talked to Asia Wilson, and we played this during our last show, I believe, but she said they're going into these playoffs with joy, and I saw that in leaps and bounds. And they just handled the storm. It was to them, it didn't matter who was on that court. They were winning, and their plan is to continue to do so, and you can see that. They look so good. The timing for the Aces right now is just perfect, right? I mean, they are firing on all cylinders. So for me, when I see, you know, that they just the way that they were in that game, I personally can't see them being stopped. I can't. Now, the Lynx, I would say the same thing. And let me tell you why. We saw Nafisa, I think she hurt her ankle again. There was a possibility of that. But what the Lynx have done is during the season, they actually were still winning even when Fee wasn't there, right? And so, and that's just the truth if you look at the numbers. So when I think about this team, even with Fee, you know, possibly not playing as many minutes or whatever the case may be when it comes to her injury, you just see players on that team stepping up every night, and their confidence is just, you know, at the highest that it could be. They walk in every gym. In the whole season they've done this. There hasn't been a lull. Like, yes, have they dropped some games? For sure. But they know what they are kind of on track to do, what they've had kind of in their bag the whole season. They have that chip on their shoulder from the last one. They're on a mission. And so I can't see them being stopped. Could they drop a game? Yes. But I can't see them being stopped either. Not after what we just saw.
Yeah, I feel like it could be a collision course, right, to the finals. Yeah. And we'll get 7. That's wild to me. I just think there's a level of determination that we see. It's in every pass, every play, every possession. Hello, alliteration. Anyway, it's just there. It's just there for these teams right now in a way that separates them from the rest of the field. And we talked a little bit about that there just needs to be a little bit more. I like the word you use, Ashley, a little more tenacity, right? From
Yeah.
Phoenix and New York. I think Atlanta is they're consistent, and they're like rushing on that top tier. They're just not there yet comparative to what we've seen Minnesota and the Aces do. And I think the difference is that those two squads, those rosters have been together, and Carl is a great coach. I've talked about where I think he is in Coach of the Year. And he's new to the WNBA, going up against Becky Hammond, who played in the W, coached in the NBA on just one of the greatest, under one of the greatest coaches, in the NBA, and is now being successful in the WNBA, versus Cheryl Reeve, who, if she gets another title, she is the bench boss of the winningest franchise in WNBA history. Like, this is what's on the line. Atlanta is just not there yet. So yeah, I think that at least for this season, stranger things could happen. New York and all of the question marks, including the injuries, it just doesn't seem like this is their year. But I've been telling y'all, Minnesota likes odd numbers. They've only ever won a championship in odd years.
I think the most impressive thing for me about the Lynx and the Aces is that, like we said earlier, everyone is tired. Everyone's banged up. It's been a long season. Everyone's had to fight in some way, shape, or form, whether it's fight to pull themselves out of a hole that they were in prior to the All-Star break, fight to stay atop of the season or within the standings, fight against injuries to their team, to some of their best players at the wrong time, and everyone had to step up an extra level to stay afloat. Everyone's had to fight through something, right? No one, I feel like, has coasted this season where you can say, oh, they've had an easy path to the playoffs. I feel like everyone's dealt with something. But I think that the thing that sticks out to me the most about the Lynx and the Aces is their ability to fight through the fatigue that everybody's feeling and still play at a level that is just more competitive than everyone else. And I think that's the testament of a championship caliber team, a team that's going to go deep in the playoffs, is how do you fight through the fatigue? And again, this is not knocking teams who are injured, because sometimes injuries happen at the worst possible time. But like we were talking about, Erica, with the Liberty, it's just not the determination to fight through the obstacle in front of you just isn't there in the way that it has been for these other two teams that we're talking about. And these two teams are just as tired and have dealt with their fair share of injuries and pulling themselves out of, a deficit in some way, shape, or form. But the way that they're playing, you would think, in a sense, it was almost game one of the entire regular season. And I wish that we saw, as a Liberty fan, I wish I was seeing that same level of just urgency from them that I'm not seeing. And I wish that they kind of picked up on some of what the Lynx and the Aces are doing, where it's like, there's an urgency factor here that I need you to play like it's the first game of the regular season and you trying to make a statement. And I think that, to me, outside of what both of these teams have been doing all season long, I think that for me, it's their ability to kind of play every game as if it's their first game out and kind of set that precedent that I think is really just kind of standing out to me the most.
I think another thing too is for the Lynx team, it's their depth as well.
Yeah.
Every single, I think in the last game, 5 Lynx players were in double digits, including Fee, who had a game high of 20. On 7 of 11 shooting. But you look at the depth that they have. And then for the Aces, it's the increased depth that they got during the season with NaLyssa Smith. When she came, you cannot deny that it just turned kind of the tides for them in their season. And what she has done has been great. I saw a clip where they asked her, what exactly about her defense she was proud of. And and she said all of it.
All of it, everything. I was like, I know that's right. You better say it.
And she should be, because what she has done for this team and how she has made the rest of the players more powerful with what she does is exactly why they are. And not the only reason, but a huge reason why they are in the position that they are right now, in the exact perfect position to be in at this point in the playoffs. So definitely the depth for both teams has been a key to why I don't think anyone is going to ultimately be able to stop them. But, unfortunately right now, something that we have to stop is this show, because we're at the end.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
Yeah, we are at the end. And so make sure that you don't stop tapping in with us, because we're going to have so much to talk about when it comes to the WNBA playoffs and also just women's sports in general. So tap in with all of these ways that you can do so. Subscribe on YouTube, join that community. And also we will have a QR code at the end of this episode so you can tap in that way as well. So ladies, just get ready. We got a lot more games to talk about and to hash out, and we can't wait to continue to talk to you about the WNBA and beyond right here on We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T.